we think about systems as sometimes negative things, like things that interrupt our creativity, but they're not. And actually, this session, more than anything, touches on how these structures actually enhance our creativity.
Every good educator knows we start with assessment. First, we need to know where the student is, and we take them forward from there. And we know that success is the best motivator. And if I was, I do actually have a chemistry A-level, but apparently they say dopamine kicks in when you have success and that motivates you. Okay, it's not my area of specialism, and I hate talking about things I don't know about very well, but you're not assessing if you give a 10 out of 10 test, because you didn't really find out what they can do. You just found out they could do those things, right?
Welcome to the Qualified Tutor Podcast. I'm your host, Ludo Miller, and I'll be interviewing tutors and thought leaders from across the tutoring landscape to inspire, inform, and motivate you to become the best tutor you can be. The Qualified Tutor community is a safe and supportive space for tutors who love to learn and grow. We offer training, resources, ideas, and a chance to connect with like-minded tutors. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join our Qualified Tutor community at www.qualifiedtutorcommunity.org or find it in the show notes.
Hi there, my name is Alex Asher. I'm the CEO of LearnCube, and I'm here with Julia Silva once again. Julia Silva is the founder of Qualified Tutor. They're real experts in tutor training, which is why I was super excited to talk about this session, which has a brilliant title too: How to Smash not just your first, but every first tutoring session. So Julia, let's talk about it.
Thanks, Alex. I am really, really happy to be able to cover these ideas with you today. First, I want to explain the title.
All right.
And it's actually based on a workshop that we've written that's available on our community, qualifiedtutorcommunity.org. And so I will get to explaining how the workshop works as our fifth point, but we're going to build up to it. The concept and the title of How to Smash Your First Session is when you get it right, it feels like a smash. So there's something incredibly fulfilling about teaching and tutoring because you see it going in and you see your student responding. So what we're after here is understanding what we're trying to achieve, planning strategies that will help us to achieve those things, and feeling that, oh, bullseye, absolutely nailed that. You should be coming out of your tutoring sessions feeling energized, feeling like, oh, that student got what they needed right now. And that's what we're going to try to build up. Now, why the first session?
Okay.
First sessions are daunting, no question. The truth is every session can be daunting because you're always sort of stepping into the unknown, aren't you? But the problem with the first session is you don't know how to pitch it. You don't know who your student is or where they're up to. And whatever the teacher may have said, or the parent may have said, or the student themselves may have said, you have to work out what you see. You have to look at the student with fresh eyes. So what we're going to talk about here is ways to continue that concept of building engagement that we spoke about last time, but also build in opportunities for assessment.
Okay.
Because every good educator knows we start with assessment. First, we need to know where the student is, and we take them forward from there. Now, assessment doesn't have to be anything particularly formal. It's much more about watching and understanding what you're seeing your student can do and what they know. And from there, you'll plan their next steps.
Got it. I mean, what I really like about this is if we get this right, every first session should feel like you're already set up for success, right? Because you know what you're already going to cover. You've already got that framework. So for me, I really like how you talk about it's really a known unknown, right? Like, you know that this is the stuff that you're going to have to figure out. And if you do that in a way that it, like 90% of the time, you're getting a positive result, perfect.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about positive results because you can sort of bake them in.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that as well. I think it's also worth pointing out that a tutor doesn't have a captive audience in the same way that a teacher does. You know, if you don't like your year 2 teacher, you still have to come back tomorrow. And so the teacher gets a chance to have another go and have another go, build a relationship, make a difference over the course of a year. With a tutor, in a way, it's much more high stakes. That first session is really an interview. And if you don't smash it, you may not get the repeat business. And that's not just from the economic point of view. You're trying to make a change with your student that will happen over time, in which case you have to build commitment. And that first impression that you're going to create will hopefully create a long-term relationship for you with a student.
Definitely.
So Alex, let's get into the first strategy I have for you. And this is something that I use with students of every age. I've used it in small groups, one-to-one, and in full class settings. In a class, it would be called a class contract. And it's a sort of mutual discussion and agreement about values. The way that I do it in a much more informal tutoring session is an all about me letter. And so it's an unwritten contract that has an opportunity for me to communicate what my values are, what my priorities are, and what you can expect from me. And likewise, I'm going to give the student an opportunity to share the same. So it starts off as an informal letter, but actually it packs a lot of punch.
Great.
The idea about letter writing is that if you love to write like I do, there's a lot of scope in there for you to be funny, creative, pique their interest.
Yeah.
So some of the things that I like to do is I'll tell them 3 of my favorite things. And I'll be really intentional about what I tell them. I tend to tell them I love reading, I love cooking, and I love dancing in the kitchen with my children. And just from telling them those things, I'm telling them that I value reading, which is really, really important to unlocking any learning. And then they know that I'm a mum, so I'm relatable. And they know that I'm fun and I like to be active, and they can expect to have a good time learning with me. So I've done a lot of culture setting simply by telling them those things about me. Another thing I like to do is I like to tell them what worries me. So recently I was working with a year 6 student, and I had a feeling that, you know, he was probably feeling a little bit sort of daunted about stepping into high school. And so I told him that I get stressed out when there's too much going on, but I know that if I take a deep breath, I'll get through it and I'll feel very satisfied with what I've achieved by the end of the day. So just by showing him my own vulnerability as a person, my own strategies for resilience, I sort of sown a seed with him that, number 1, I can relate, and number 2, he'll be fine as well.
Do you do that sequentially, or do you try, like, one of the things I like from what you've said, first of all, is this idea you're kind of giving information before maybe asking for that reciprocity. I feel a lot about that reciprocity thing. It's true in sales and it's true in tutoring. And in a way you're selling tutoring, not necessarily the transaction of it, but the result of it. Like as a tutor, you should be doing that all the time with your student, is going, you're going to get great value. I'm selling you the idea that learning is great with me. I mean, surely that must be part of it.
100%. Daniel Pink's book, To Sell is Human,
Yeah.
he talks about how educators are salespeople. We're selling ideas and we're selling learning. So yeah, for sure you want to implement those strategies, and reciprocity is key here. The way that I do it really practically is that I tend to open a session, and recently I've been tutoring on 9Cube, and they'll have a letter that I've written to them open on the first whiteboard page.
I was so going to ask that. I was like, is this something that you collaborate? I mean, for example, in LearnCube, you could put it in a Google Doc. You could just put it on the whiteboard itself. Like there are ways that you can collaborate on both of those spaces. But is it something that you want the other person to be able to like literally push buttons and see that letter change? Or is it a document that you kind of control? And tell me about that experience.
Well, you know, a letter is something that I give to you and then you give me one back.
Okay.
So my letter, I have written it in advance for my student. And it will be formatted with fonts and colors that are appropriate to that student at that age, because we've spoken about personalization. and then I will ask them to reply. So what's happened is that they will have read my letter aloud to me. So I'm assessing a certain level of reading ability, and I can really pitch that. I can create something that's quite nuanced. I can create something with a lot of inference, or I can create something very, very straight, depending on who the student is. And then I will ask them to write back to me. And so once they start writing, I can, and it's fascinating because one of the things that working online does is it gets you to really watch the children thinking. You can sort of watch their little minds ticking over as they're writing, and you see them stumble, you see them hesitate with a spelling word or that kind of thing. And then as the writing is revealed to me, I get to find out firstly how much they've written, how confident they were with their writing, how well the spelling is and the punctuation is, of course, those technical things. Also how self-aware they are, whether they were able to follow my structures. I may well have given them the structure. Please give me 3 favorite things and 1 thing that worries you.
Sure.
What you're looking forward to, what you'd like to achieve with me is another key question. And if they've managed to sort of follow that scaffold and produce something that really communicates effectively, I've learned a lot about what the student can do. Equally, if they struggle with this task, I will stop the session. The rest of the session will be based around helping them to write this letter, because I want the letter written because I want them to go through that process with me, and I will help them to be successful in it, which takes us directly to the next point.
Okay, let's do it.
So we spoke just now about baking in success, and we know that success is the best motivator. And if I was I do actually have a chemistry A-level, but apparently they say dopamine kicks in when you have success and that motivates you. Okay, it's not my area of specialism, and I hate talking about things I don't know about very well. But if you can build quick wins in with your student, then they will keep coming back for more. So I sort of liken it to a personal trainer.
Totally.
Yeah, you're not going to burn your student out, your client out on the first session. You're going to build their muscles slowly. So make it a comfortable pace initially and help them to build in those quick wins. Give them targets. Think about the couch to 5K, right? And you think sort of, I've given you a starting point and an end goal, and I'll give you milestones along the way. I have yet to do couch to 5K, that's the truth. It's sort of there on my horizon somewhere. But I do think that if you can teach your student to expect to be successful in your sessions, to come out feeling like a winner, then they'll come back for more and they'll love learning. And that's our biggest goal.
I really like that. I think I actually relate to it on the health side, so totally get it. But also, I think it's so important that you start low enough that you can't, and even kind of maybe you allow yourself to kind of present that to the person. Like, I'm going to start off with this. Let's just see where you're at. So there's no expectation on it. And then if they nail it, then it's like, great, that was an easy, you can communicate like, oh yeah, that was an easy one. Or if they really struggle, it's like, oh, that was, we have some people that struggle with that, but you want that person to be like, okay with their level, no matter what, I would have thought.
Yeah, the way that I think about it is with times tables. You just start everybody's on 2 5s and 10s. I know it's year 2 level, but if there's a gap there, you want to know about it.
Yeah.
And if they're fluent, then let them feel like winners.
Right.
And then you'll build up to the 4s and the 8s, and then you'll go to the 7s and the 9s, which I still don't know, but it is, I do actually. But it is useful to give your student that feeling of, I see myself as a winner.
Yeah.
My tutor sees me as a winner. In this environment, I can be successful regardless what happens in the classroom all day, every day, which is exhausting.
Yeah.
If I can have 1 hour a week where I feel like a success, that's fantastic. And I'm not just talking about primary school students. You know very well that when you're working with adult learners,
Definitely.
you need to build in wins.
Yeah, I think I'm curious, maybe a little bit later on, just understanding how that process looks for an adult learner. Like, I guess I'm like, oh, the letter, would I be okay with that? Like, part of me thinks that there's going to be a format that will work for an adult learner without feeling like being a kid. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, but I think we can cover that a little bit later.
Well, you know that I'm into alliteration, right? So in this blog that I'm going to share with you to add to your show notes, I have said that letters are so flexible because they allow you to be as friendly, as funny, or as formal as you like. And it could be that you would write a more sort of articulated contract, a code of conduct, or a formal letter to an adult learner, because regardless of their age or your context, you need to establish a culture, a culture of learning. You need to show them what to expect. And the more explicit you can be about that, and the more reciprocal it can be, the better your grounding is going forward.
Yeah, what I really like about it, regardless, again, is that level of professionalism. Like if I'm a student in that class, if I'm a kid, I'm like, oh, okay, this person has authority. If I'm an adult, I'm like, huh, this person's like, they've got a system. Anyone that's got a system, I'm like, I'm already interested because this person's obviously done this before. And hey, maybe this has really worked for them. So hey, maybe it can work for me as well. And it kind of shows preparation. Probably if you're using, as an example, LearnCube or something like that, you might, just the fact that you're able to show something more visually might go, oh, okay, this person's like tech, like understands like how to kind of do this online. Or if it's in person, of course, it would be the same thing. Hey, this person turns up with resources, is prepped for me, and is really ready to listen. Like all of those things are exactly the setting for the future. So I really like it.
We really drill down into professionalism. It's actually our entry-level conversation, because you can't overestimate the non-verbal cues that are communicated through professionalism. And it's not just, I'm going to employ this person. It's actually, I'm going to trust this person and let them take me where they want to take me, So we actually base a lot of that work on Rachel Botsman's work, Who Can You Trust, which is well worth an explore, because she points out, why is it that we trust politicians? No, we don't trust politicians and doctors, but we do trust Airbnb and Uber.
Yeah.
So the transactions, the cues for trustworthiness are different nowadays. And professionalism is also different nowadays. It's a lot more human than it used to be.
Yeah.
So you can show up with all your vulnerabilities and be a person as long as you are appropriate.
I like that. It's a great word for that.
If you'd like to hear more about the ideas we touch on here, or gain the tools to take your own tutoring to the next level, the qualification for tutors could be for you. This live online seminar is facilitated by industry experts who, over 4 Zoom workshops, will cover the foundations of teaching and learning and how it relates to you as a tutor. The workshops are full of rich discussions where you'll learn alongside other tutors and connect on a professional level. We will teach you how to be the kind of tutor every child remembers. Visit our community space at qualifiedtutorcommunity.org and sign up now for our transformative course. We'll see you there.
You want to go on?
I do. I'm looking forward to the next one.
I'm going to tell you about a fantastic phrase from this wonderful book. Is that backwards for you? This is Mary Myatt's book, High Challenge, Low Threat. And we love this phrase in Qualified Tutor because the concept is, in schools, I'm so mean to schools, aren't I? In schools, we tend to do low challenge, high threat testing. You got to get 10 out of 10. To be fair, if I gave you a year 5, no, I'm going to make it easier. If I gave you a year 3 level piece of work, you would get 10 out of 10 every time, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't find out how much you really know.
Yeah.
I just found out that you know up to a year 3 level. Year 5 is very difficult. So I'm suggesting, well, Mary Myatt is suggesting, if you take the lid off your assessment, if you create an open-ended assessment that is full of challenge, but equally you reduce the threat just by creating this environment of, it's fine to get things wrong, it's fine to have a go, it's fine to say I don't know. Then you can find out what your student is really capable of. So to take you right back to that first point, that what we're trying to achieve is assessment.
Yeah. You're
not assessing if you give a 10 out of 10 test, because you didn't really find out what they can do. You just found out they could do those things, right? Daisy Christodoulou is very, very vocal on assessments and making them make sense. An assessment could be anything that gives you a snapshot of what your student can do, but the richer and more open it is, the more information you as a tutor are going to get. And we have this freedom to be really responsive. So this is what I suggest. Get a rich resource that's tied into your subject. So it could be a newspaper article, or it could be a poem, or it could just be an artifact. It could be a hat or a boot, something that gets the student really pique their interest.
Yeah.
And then do an activity around it. And it could just be a chat. It could honestly just be a conversation to explore their thinking. What do they know about this? What could they think about this? What they could understand? How could they describe it? And let them show you what they know and what they can do in a really open-ended, low threat environment. You'll find out so much more about what they're up to, and they'll get that gorgeous feeling of, she's just here for me right now. That this is all that's happening right now. I'm 2 feet in, exploring this open-ended subject with you, and there's no wrong answers.
I think that's super powerful. I hadn't really thought about it. And I think part of me being here is just, I'm just as curious as you are, probably excited to tell me about it. But I think it sort of jumps at my own previous experience anyway. So first of all, when assessment is like Jenga, where like I can build up my little thing. If it's too small, I'm like, well, it was a tiny little Jenga thing. I only put 3 blocks on it. I'm not going to feel that great about it. But then you go like, hey, do this insane big Jenga thing. And I've taken all of the things out. And if one thing goes wrong, the whole thing's going to crash. Then I'm equally like completely frustrated. This is going to be a horrible experience. If it's like steps, I kind of feel like that could be like a safe thing. But what I really liked about what you said there, rather than sort of maybe a step and sort of until you get to your limit, is even that has a level of I'm going back. No, I've got to pull back. Whereas the open-ended thing is we're exploring together, and you as a professional tutor will know what the assessment is. So I think that's really powerful.
I really, the games that I play with my children at home are building games and creative games. I don't play games with starts, middles, and ends. They're too linear. It's just not my style. So you'll see that my approach is quite curly. That's the way I call it, and holistic. We keep going over the same ideas, and left and right is as interesting as back and forward. Which is fine because we have a bigger goal for a student as a learner. Yeah. It's not fine if you've got a biology GCSE ahead of you. So I don't tutor biology GCSE, but I do find that if you can, because my specialism is primary, if you can build foundations by having the freedom to go left and right, as well as forward and back, the grounding is much, much richer.
Great.
So, there is one more element that I wanted to share with you today, and that takes us directly to our workshop, How to Smash Your Every First Session. And it's actually a little bit bigger than that, because you can repeat this session structure not only on your first session, but I'm going to explain how it works now. It's a 5-step plan, and it goes like this. Goal, model, scaffold, create, publish. You can find this all on our site. Goal means you set an ambitious goal. By the end of this session, we're going to have written a poem, or we're going to have a solution to this question, or created a poster on this topic. Then we're going to model it. Model means show them what success looks like. Actually show them one that you've done earlier, like the blue pizza phrase. I don't know if you know that. So here's what I've done earlier is modeling. And if you can show people what success looks like, you're setting them up for success. And I know that I just spoke about open-ended activities, but what's nice about models and scaffolds that we're going to get to in a second is it's a structure that allows you to be creative within that structure and still come out with a successful piece. So giving people boundaries in every sense allows them to be free and creative within those boundaries. So we model and then we scaffold. So whereas the model will be an example, for example, of a letter, a scaffold will be a format, maybe with fill-in boxes, introduction, middle paragraph, main block, signing off, whatever they are, your various steps to achieve your letter, so that your student can follow step by step to achieve the equivalent. I like to compare it to, those gorgeous recipe books. I bought my daughter the Bake Off book, right, for her 11th birthday. She's marching her way through it. She's doing beautifully. And the model will be the photo of the finished piece.
Okay.
And the scaffold will be the step-by-step instructions.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then what you're going to do is you're going to step back and let your student create. So once they've seen what it looks like, how to go at planning it out step by step, you're going to give them some space and sit back and let them write their own, let them make their own. And then the most powerful part, and this is the surprising part, is publish.
Okay. Publish
is so simple. Publish is sending a WhatsApp photo to their mum of the work that they've done. Publish is putting it up on the fridge. Yeah. Anything, of course, you have to be mindful of GDPR. So if you're sharing anybody's work, for example, if you wanted to put a gorgeous piece of work that your student did on Twitter, that's totally fine, as long as no identifying information is there, not their name, a photo of them, nothing like that. But everybody in the edu Twitter field wants to see a sample of a year 5 student's gorgeous work. So don't hesitate. How meaningful does a piece of work that I've worked on for an hour feel when it's shared, when it's made public, on the fridge, just on the fridge? But the minute that you publish a thing, it gives it so much more meaning. And schools do this whenever they can, by putting work up on the wall, or by sending a note home to the mum, or photocopying a beautiful piece of work and sending it home. If you can give your student that sense of meaning, this doesn't just remain in a book. I'm not binning this after the session. Yeah. It's actually a meaningful creation. That is intrinsic motivation. That's what keeps you and me going. And our students don't get a chance to feel that enough.
Yeah, what I really like about that is on so many different levels. And it's kind of like, I feel like I can break these up, right? Like if I'm a little kid, then I'm already like, first of all, the main customer is actually the parent, right? So you've got something that's an outcome for the parent. And it's not just for the kid as well. Like the parent feels like they're a good parent, right? Like that's actually, like we kind of forget, like they're like a really important stakeholder in this. They want to have a good experience, not just the child.
It's very emotional as a mum. It's very, when you ask a tutor, I'm changing hats now.
Yeah.
You ask a tutor to help your student, and I've got 2 tutors working with my various kids at the moment. You're sort of putting your heart on a plate and putting it out there. Help me. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think, even if they're a teenager, then again, the parent is going to be possibly even more skeptical, right? They're like, they'll want to see kind of some outcome. And you can do that, I'm imagining, in quite a safe way. Be like, look, at the end of each session, I'll send you like a follow-up email, text, chat, whatever you want to call that communication piece. But usually you can do it in a way that you include the parent in that. Usually there's nothing wrong with that, I would imagine. And as you share that, it's like mainly to the student. I think as they get older, it becomes more and more towards the student, right? So if they're an older teenager, you're kind of addressing the student as an adult, but then the parent might be there as, basically buying the sessions, but they'll still want to be included in that. And I just think of then adult learners as well. You're still, again, part of that professional will be sending them, hey, this is the outcome of our session. This was worth your time. This is what we created together. So all of those things, there's no downside to sending something, but there's a massive downside if you don't. To the kid or to the parent, it means I don't know if something's happened. To the teenager, again, did something happen? I don't know. Will I have to wait for 10 more sessions before I see anything? There's like a black box element there that maybe I don't feel that comfortable about. But if on the first session, I'm already getting an outcome, that's going to tell a lot, I think, about the future relationship.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And let's look at those adult learners again for a second, because I was just having a lovely conversation with Sarah Meads, who's her background is in post-16, so further education. And she said that she did her MA recently And she rolled it out on quite a large scale. And it was simply teaching tutors in colleges to celebrate success. That was the whole strategy. She said that they improved, Shauna just said this to me now, she said that they improved retention in their college by 2% just from this small adjustment of their approach. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, absolutely.
So everybody wants to see success. Everybody wants to celebrate success, no question. And then you said that you were sort of breaking it down into the steps. So you started at the end with publish. What else resonated with you?
What I also liked was the intention around, I mean, you talked about limitations. I didn't see limitations when I heard scaffolding and a base. I heard a safety net. Like for me, that was a safe space. And it showed again, preparation, professionalism. So if I give somebody a blank canvas, I mean, it sounds like a nice idea, but it's very unhelpful, I would have thought, to most learners. I don't want a blank canvas. The whole purpose of me getting a tutor is I want you to help me create that scaffolding so I can learn faster and maybe build some of those supports so I don't fall through every time. So for me, it makes total sense. And again, it applies to every single level. And that's what I quite like about our conversations. They're so universal. Like, I know that you can tend to sound like it's for a primary kid, but it could be totally for an adult if you just change the flavor.
Yeah, we're big into that in Qualified Tutor, so much so that I have a tutor just this morning who asked me if she can submit for her final recording for her level 3, a tutoring session with a 60-year-old.
Yeah.
I said, of course, absolutely. It's universal. Teaching and learning is universal, and we have to see ourselves as both teachers and learners. And then the subject and the phase comes and goes.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you very, very much for the time that we spent together. I'm really enjoying this series, which I'm calling Love Tutoring, because it's coming straight from the heart. And I hope that it's communicating the passion and enthusiasm that is going to come through the tutors to the students. That's the message. The message is that if you and I can infuse tutors, then the students are going to get that lift that we want them to have.
Thank you so much for that, Julia. I think we've learned an absolute ton about smashing that first session every single time. And what were those main points that we went through again, Julia? Just because I'm learning too.
Okay, what did we cover? We covered the importance of creating engagement to keep them coming back for more, and opportunities for assessment. And I told you that my first way of doing that is with a letter. I present a letter at the beginning of the session. I let them read it to me, get the messages that I'm trying to communicate, and then write one back for me. And whilst they're writing, I'm doing a lot of assessment about what they can do, what they know, and how they feel about learning. And then I spoke to you about building in small, quick wins. And we compared it to a personal trainer who's not going to make you pull a muscle on the first session, but build up slowly. We spoke about high challenge, low risk, and I showed you Mary Myatt's fabulous book, because we know that we don't want to assess in a closed way, because we want to find out how much the student really knows. We also know that rich, open-ended activities pique a student's interest in a way that builds intrinsic motivation, which is what we're really after. And then right at the end, I pointed you to How to Smash Every First Tutoring Session, which is a workshop that we deliver. It's free, it's a recording on the Qualified Tutor community, which you can join just by looking up qualifiedtutorcommunity.org, and we will let you in if you ask us nicely. And what you'll see there is that we work through every step of that 5-step plan, which was to cover again: goal, model, scaffold, create, and publish. Each one is its own workshop, really. But by working through that concept, and just by hearing for the first time, scaffold, that's a good idea, scaffold. Ooh, I was doing it and I didn't notice. Yeah. What I've given you now is some takeaway strategies to make a big difference. And just that last thing that I really wanted to remind you, Alex, I am sharing Love Tutoring because I want to inspire tutors to inspire their students. So I'm hoping that all that joy is going to flow straight through and benefit students all over the place at all different ages and subjects.
What a great message to finish on. Thank you again, Julia, and see you next time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks for listening to the Qualified Tutor podcast, where tutors share their expertise to support the tutoring community. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join our Qualified Tutor community at www.qualifiedtutorcommunity.org or find it in the show notes below. We exist to connect, share, and learn with you because tutoring is a small job that makes a big difference.